This is not about poor form. This is not about a punishment. This is not about a disciplinary suspension. And yet Rory McIlroy, a former champion and one of the biggest stars in the sport, could genuinely be shut out of the Genesis Scottish Open by the year 2028. It sounds almost impossible to believe. A player competing in an event this week being told, 2 years from now, that he no longer qualifies to enter it. That possibility has become one of the hottest talking points in golf, and Rory McIlroy is now sending a direct message to the people shaping the sport's future. So let us break down exactly what is happening. Why is Rory McIlroy suddenly being linked to a possible ban? Is the risk actually real? And why has world number 1 Scottie Scheffler decided to back him? The answers reveal a much bigger story about where professional golf is heading. Let us start with where things stand today. At this moment, Rory McIlroy is back at the Genesis Scottish Open, held at the Renaissance Club in North Berwick. He is chasing the title for the second time in his career, having previously triumphed at the event in 2023. The tournament serves as the perfect preparation
forward,
for many of the sport's leading names ahead of the Open later this month. This year, the field is fiercely competitive, featuring 14 of the world's top 20 players, all chasing the $1.17 million winner's purse, with a total prize fund of around $6.7 million, which is roughly $9 million. The importance of this event goes beyond the money. Sitting just 1 week before the Open Championship, which takes place at Royal Birkdale next week, the Scottish Open has become the premier links warm-up for the world's best golfers. It gives players from the United States a chance to adjust to seaside links conditions before the final major of the season, and Rory McIlroy has made a strong start this week, opening with a round of 65 and putting himself right in the mix at the top of the leaderboard. On the surface, everything about this year's event appears completely normal. But behind the scenes, the real conversation is not about 2026 at all. It is about what professional golf will look like in 2028. And that is where this entire story begins. Now here is the backbone of it all. Last month, in June 2026, the PGA Tour boards approved a sweeping overhaul of the sport's competitive structure set to debut in the 2028 season. These changes are being driven by PGA Tour CEO Brian Rowlap, who will officially take over as commissioner on the 1st of January. The plan was shaped with input from the Future Competition Committee, whose advisors include 15-time major champion Tiger Woods and former Chicago Cubs executive Theo Epstein. So what exactly is changing? The PGA Tour is being divided into 2 separate tiers. The first is the PGA Tour Championship Series, which is the top level. It will feature approximately 120 of the best players in the world, with each event carrying a purse of at least $20 million. It will include roughly 23 to 24 events, counting the 4 majors, the Players' Championship, and international team events such as the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup. The season will run from February to August. Crucially, there will be no sponsor exemptions and no alternate lists. The second tier is the PGA Tour Challenger Series. This is the level below, featuring at least 20 events, fields of around 144 players, and purses of at least $4 million. Now here is the part that matters most for this story. The 2 series will run at the same time, concurrently, and Championship Series players will not be allowed to enter Challenger Series events, while Challenger Series players cannot enter Championship Series events. Movement between the 2 happens through a system of promotion and relegation, much like European soccer leagues. A player can earn immediate promotion by winning 2 Challenger Series events in the same season, or by winning a major championship. The stated reasoning behind all of this is meritocracy, clarity, and getting the best players competing together more consistently. As Brian Rowlap explained, the goal is a system grounded in results on the course, with clearer pathways and higher stakes. But this brings us to the heart of the problem, and the reason Rory McIlroy is speaking out. The Scottish Open is co-sanctioned by the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour, a partnership that has been in place since 2022. By its very nature, a national open is meant to be open, allowing players from multiple tours to compete against one another. That idea clashes directly with a closed elite series. Here is the danger. Under the framework, as a championship series golfer, Rory McIlroy would be prohibited from entering Challenger Series events. So, if the Scottish Open is not slotted into the exclusive championship series, and instead falls into the Challenger Series, then top players like Rory McIlroy would be barred from playing it. That is exactly where the word ban comes from. Adding to the uncertainty is the money. The Scottish Open's current purse of around $9 million sits well below the $20 million minimum required for championship series events, which is why its placement in the new structure is genuinely unclear. But here is the single most important detail, and it must be stated plainly. Rory McIlroy has not been banned. This is a discussion about what could happen in 2028 if the proposed eligibility rules are implemented without changes. Right now, this is a debate about the future, not a punishment that has already been handed down. That distinction is critical, and it separates the facts from the more sensational headlines circulating online. So, what did Rory McIlroy actually say? Interestingly, he did not focus on how the changes might affect him personally. Instead, he shifted the conversation towards something much bigger: the identity of golf's national opens. He warned that officials need to think carefully before forcing these historic tournaments into a rigid structure that limits who can compete. Speaking to reporters at the Renaissance Club, Rory McIlroy said, "We've got to be careful with that, because then these national opens lose the fabric of what they are." That one sentence captures the core of his concern. For him, this is not simply about protecting his own schedule. It is about making sure these events do not lose the very thing that makes them special. He went further, explaining exactly why restricting access would be so damaging. You can't call yourself a national open anymore if it's a closed-off tournament and there's a certain number of guys, he said. In other words, if the field becomes too exclusive, the event loses the open identity that has defined it for generations. Rory McIlroy also made the point that these tournaments should not be treated like every other stop on the schedule. These events need to be treated differently than the Travelers Championship or RBC Heritage or whatever else is going to be in the championship series, he explained. He added that there is more nuance involved with these particular tournaments, and Rory McIlroy did not just criticize. He offered a vision. He praised the Scottish Open as a model for how national opens can thrive. "I think since this event has been co-sanctioned, it really has went from strength to strength," he said. You look at the quality of the field this week, you get a great sponsor like Genesis on board. They have kept making improvements to the golf course and the facilities each and every year. So I think for like these strong national opens, this to me is the blueprint of what it can be and what can happen. He even suggested expanding the idea to another national open. "I've thought, could the Canadian Open become co-sanctioned as well leading into the US Open?" Rory McIlroy said. "That could be interesting as well, trying to build out this series of national opens that have a bit more meaning behind them." He acknowledged the difficulty, though, admitting he did not know how that vision fits into the two-track system being introduced. And Rory McIlroy is not the only major star raising this concern. World number 1 and reigning Open champion Scottie Scheffler has thrown his support behind keeping the Scottish Open in the top tier. "It needs to work within the new schedule," Scottie Scheffler said. He then explained precisely why it matters so much. "It's an important one that we keep it in the championship series, just because you get so many guys that come over here and play the week before the Open." Scottie Scheffler also touched on one of the guiding ideas behind the entire overhaul, which is getting the best players to compete together more often. "Golf is so difficult to rank players when they are not playing together all the time," he said. "Having similar guys playing against each other on great golf courses week in and week out is the best way to set up our schedule. To have this tournament fit into that mold would be really nice." However, Scottie Scheffler admitted it is hard to tell whether the field should still include DP World Tour players under the new setup. Another voice has joined the discussion as well. Bob McIntyre, Scotland's leading player, called for exceptions to be made for his home Open when the new schedule arrives. But Bob McIntyre was notably relaxed about the future. "I personally think the Scottish Open is going to be totally fine," he said. "I don't see it being a $20 million event. I see it being a Rolex Series/European Tour event. It would be a bit mad to put a $20 million event in Scotland given the world we live in today. It's not the same as America." Why does all of this carry so much weight? Because when the world number one, a six-time major champion, and the host nation's biggest star all raise the same concern, it becomes much harder for officials to simply dismiss it. Stepping back, this exposes the real challenge facing the PGA Tour. How do you modernize professional golf, create a more competitive and simpler structure, and still protect tournaments that fans and players have valued for generations? That is the balancing act now facing the sport's leadership. It is worth noting that the doom and gloom framing does not tell the whole story. The PGA Tour has actually signaled that it wants to elevate international and national opens, not eliminate them. As part of its strategic alliance with the DP World Tour, the Tour plans a series of elevated international events in the fall. The Australian Open has already been announced as a new partner event, and tournaments such as the Irish Open and the Canadian Open have been mentioned as possibilities. That commitment cuts directly against the idea that these events are being abandoned. There is also outside pressure to consider. The rival Live Golf League, which lost the financial backing of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund and is searching for new investors, has reportedly been eyeing national opens as part of its own future plans. That adds another layer of competition for these historic events. And here is the most reassuring point of all. The year 2028 is still 2 years away. The details of the new structure are still being finalized through 2027. As one longtime PGA Tour member, Lucas Glover, put it, the Tour has about 18 months to figure out the nuance, and there is still a lot to work out. In short, there is time to adjust the plan before anything is set in stone. So when you strip everything back, the truth is clear. Rory McIlroy has not been banned from anything. What exists is a real structural risk, one he is trying to head off early, before the new rules are locked in. He is using his voice now, while there is still time to shape the outcome. And with Scottie Scheffler and Bob McIntyre echoing the same message, the pressure on officials to protect these events is only growing. The bigger question is, one the entire golf world is now debating: should national opens like the Scottish Open receive special exemptions under the PGA Tour's new structure, allowing players like Rory McIlroy to keep competing in them? Or should every single tournament follow the same rules with no exceptions? It is a debate about tradition versus modernization, and the answer could shape the future of golf's most historic events for years to come. The outcome may still be 2 years away. But one thing is already clear. If Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler are pushing back this early, then this conversation is far from over.